Oh, so when did you start singing?
Gosh.
I'm just going to get in there.
Yeah, go right into the beginning. I started singing, well, I mean, I was like a little kid all the time, and I was obsessed with The Little Mermaid.
Oh, I love it.
You know, when she's putting the voice into like the shell, and I would sing that constantly all the time.
I love it.
But I started like studying singing when I was a tween. What they call it, like 12 or something like that.
Okay.
And I would have loved to start earlier, but people would say like, oh, you shouldn't study voice as a child.
Okay,
So
yeah, they were worried about it damaging your voice, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But like I sang in choirs and did a lot of singing and stuff.
Nice.
So, yeah, when I finally was like, yeah, I can have voice lessons now, it just started on the classical track.
Okay, great.
And
was that a choice, or was that what was available to you at the time? In terms of the classical style?
It was just with the teacher that I was studying with. She was just a pianist at my church. And it was what she started me on. It was like old school Italian song. There's like a purple book that everyone studies, you know?
I know.
You know that book. So that's what I started on. So I'd be like practicing my aria on my way to school with my friends in the back of the car, and they'd be like, oh yeah, there's Kate singing in Italian. It's really random and weird.
I love it. And did you have an interest in dancing and acting to a degree, or?
I kind of always wanted to be an actor, but it wasn't something I ever verbalized because it wasn't a thing that I thought was like a legitimate career or a legitimate thing to want to do.
And with singing, was that the case? Did you feel that was a legitimate thing to do?
You know, I've never been asked that question. I think I did because my family is very musical, and we always make music together. And my mother studied piano in a conservatory when she was a teenager. My dad plays guitar. My sister is a professional violinist. So like music was always there.
Family.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Kind of what you see can influence what you think is possible.
Very much so. And like this idea of being an actor was something very different. And I thought it was all about, like, from what you see on television, it's famous people are like all about getting attention. And in my family, it wasn't something you would do you don't do things for attention, really.
That's
In
interesting.
that way. So it was like, oh, I can't put myself up there to get attention in that way. But singing and like singing with people, felt like a very different thing. It was very safer.
That's really interesting, because I've met quite a few people who they have the same kind of reluctance to get into singing because they feel that they need to be a showy person or a very confident person.
Right.
So it's kind
I felt the opposite.
It's almost like you need to kind of see something modelled to you and see that it's a viable career or way of life in order to take it seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to sing. I always wanted to do that. But at the same time, I was always developing these other things that I did. So there's always been a kind of a conflict or a balance between wanting to embrace being a singer and everything that means, with like doing other things in life and exploring the other possibilities that are out there. And when you're really good at one thing, then you could just go and do that. But for me, I was like, I loved singing, but I also loved like the environment, and I loved politics and international development, and I was like so excited about all of these things. So I couldn't just focus on one.
And do you think that kind of informs your work as well?
Oh, entirely. Yeah. I took a very circuitous route to get to where I am right now, where I am like a full-time singer and voice person. But because I've done that, I have so many different influences and different experiences and met so many people that you can't help but be enriched by it. So now what I do is very much kind of a path that I found for myself because I've tried so many different things and been like, well, that's cool, but not quite me. That's cool, not quite me, but it's all still present.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
so no regrets about it taking so long because it's made me an interesting person now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way things are getting these days. People are kind of becoming, I don't know whether you want to call it portfolio career, or having certain hyphens or strings to their bow.
Oh my gosh,
You know, more and more that it's becoming the case, and I think you know, we're all going to kind of go our different routes. Our careers aren't linear anymore. It's not like you just kind of start at A and then finish at Z or whatever.
Yeah, and there's no, I mean, for opera singing, you can do that because you start practicing at 15, you like get into conservatory, and then you get into your master's, and then you do the opera program, and then you do the young artist thing, and it's almost like stifling.
Did you feel that early on that it was stifling, or did you feel any conflict?
So when I was 16 or 17, I went to an opera camp.
Okay.
This place called Interlochen, which is a massive young person's music program in like Minnesota or something like that. They do year-round music, but then they also have summer programs. And I went there to their first music and opera camp, and it was really eye-opening because they had teachers who came and said, okay, this is the life of an opera star. It's really hard. You won't like actually get a real role until you're 30 something. At this point I was like, 30? That's so far away now. But they were like, yeah, it's going to be really tough. And so I kind of didn't have too much of a starry-eyed opinion about what it was going to take to be an opera person. And I did really want to apply to conservatories when I was 18 and looking at universities, but my parents were like, no, you should get a degree first. If you still really want to do singing and classical music, then do it after uni. And it still took me a couple of years out of uni to come around and be like, I still want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it.
And you studied music?
Well, at uni, no, I didn't study music.
Okay.
I studied film.
So did I.
No way!
Yes. It's so funny. I love that.
So I studied like critical film.
Okay, yeah.
Did you do it like...
Well, I went into it wanting to be a cinematographer.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because it's all about the composition for me. And then it ended up being very theoretical. And I ended up writing a lot of essays about Freud. And I was like, this is not what I expected it to be. But no regrets.
Yeah, I think like visuals were really important to me. I've always been a very visual person. So I was thinking, am I going to be a director? Am I going to be a producer? I love film. And I also loved music, but I was always doing music. So I was like, I'll always do music. I only have this chance to study film.
Sure.
So I studied film and did music on the side and was like in all the choirs and all the productions and absolutely run ragged.
But you were knackered.
I was totally knackered. But yeah, so that's what I did in the undergrad. And it wasn't until I came to London to do my master's when I when I finally entered a formal music education system, and it was a conservatoire system. It was my first time at age 26 to be introduced to what that's like, and it was very different.
I can imagine. But it might have been nice to have the maturity of just a couple of extra years really to kind of grow up a bit and find out who you are and know that it's what you really want to do. Because I think so many people, we're kind of offered an education at an age where we don't really know how we could best like use that education.
Yeah. It's like we're taught information when we really need to be taught tools to explore in a way. And
that's a big theme of yours.
Yeah.
Exploration as well.
Exploration and play and not necessarily feeling that anyone outside of you knows what's best for you. But so over the last couple of years I've been building this practice which is very based in the body. And what that has been teaching me is like how you trust yourself and your internal instincts and how when you respect that voice inside of you, then you get a lot of honest answers. And not only in terms of like, what am I going to do with my life, but also just your voice opens up in terms of what it sounds like, but also in what you want to do with that voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because for many years I was like obsessed with voice, but I felt like I was kind of shoving it into different spaces and like trying to sound like a classical singer, trying to sound like a folk singer. And that's really helpful to copy different voices. But I hadn't figured out how to be myself through my voice.
It can be over-intellectualized as well, can't it? It's like anything, any field at all, you can get really intellectual about it. But then ultimately it is a physical activity and it's also an emotional activity. And it's easy to kind of lose sight of that as well.
Yeah, especially if you have a goal ahead of you and you're like, I'm going to be that. But to get there, you actually need to allow a lot of space for discovery. So almost like just putting yourself into a straitjacket in order to achieve what you think you want is kind of dangerous in a way. So that's why I'm really glad I didn't end up actually going to conservatory at age 18 and thinking I was going to be on the opera track, because then I would never have discovered what I know now, which is quite like freeing in a way, and definitely not easy, but it feels much truer to who I am, and I'm excited about sharing it with other people and being like, you too, like, know yourself in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, so I went to one of your workshops after a while. It'd been a fairly long period of kind of not really feeling very connected to my voice, probably being a voice teacher as well, kind of being very analytical about it, because that was kind of how I was using my ears, and that was how I was able to help people kind of analysing things. That it's not helpful if you have an analyst in your brain when you're trying to express yourself. And like a lot of people at that point, I'd spent a while, you know, I'd spent several years in an office before I was teaching full time.
Yeah.
So I kind of still had that little bit of kind of feeling hunched over and all that tension that comes with it. But I think so many of us carry tension.
Yeah.
But I was really aware when I went to a workshop, I think this is just what I need. I need to kind of be a little bit more connected in my body and kind of see if there's another way, because I thought this isn't quite the right way. And I had a really good fun time. And I had to kind of get over my self-consciousness of making ridiculous noises. And and it's that kind of, you have to sort of throw yourself into it and also kind of just have a little bit of faith, because I know that you were saying, you know, it's all about operating on impulse and kind of going with the flow. And if that's not your normal state of mind, you sort of just have to kind of go with it, and there's part of you is looking at yourself going, what am I doing? But you sort of have to go, no, I'm just going to see this as an experiment and just and see what happens.
To me, it feels like in day-to-day life, all of us kind of walk down the street or like go through our lives in a framework of what's acceptable, of like how people are supposed to behave and how they're supposed to sound, and we all have these characters that we put on. And what I love about the body and the voice is you can find so many aspects of yourself that are outside of this frame but still make up you.
Yes.
And that's really exciting discovery to, it goes back to this play idea of being playful and finding like these sparks of life that take you outside of your normal frame. So it's like, it's an important practice to just be able to let go.
Absolutely.
It's really hard to let go though, and like I still struggle with it. That thing of getting away from the brain, which is very, what is it, left brain? Is the one that's like,
yes, left brain,
planning and thinking, and getting away from the left brain and letting the right brain do a little bit more of its thing.
Absolutely.
And putting you in the present.
It's schooled out of you though, I think.
Very much
the
so.
right brain thing is really schooled out of you. I used to be, as a child, just so incredibly creative and just in my own little zone, and actually probably too imaginative for my own good. You know, I'd be playing outside and then I'd be like, the witches are coming, they're coming, and I'd run inside, you know. But I just had a really rich imagination, and you know, that definitely gets socialised out of you, I think, because you need to concentrate and you need to basically be schooled in knowing the rules and knowing the right answers. Mistakes aren't really encouraged. They might be forgiven, but they're not really encouraged. And there is a very linear process of kind of learning. Was that your experience as well of school?
Yeah, definitely, because I'm a very organized, like, basically I have a producer in my head at all times. And getting away from the producer mind, there's like this way of using the body to help you do that. And I've really learned a lot from doing like mindfulness, which in like a simplest way, it's like you do a body scan and you're just, by paying attention to what your body is feeling in the moment, like the air, the pressure, those kind of things, you're able to calm your nervous system, you're able to like calm the thoughts in your mind. And that was kind of what started me off being like, oh, there's something really interesting here. Because how do you get rid of, or how do you subvert the analytical mind? There are techniques that people use for mindfulness and meditation and those kind of things. And in yoga, these movement practices are ways of helping you calm the mind. What's then the next interesting thing for me is, well, once you've done that, or once you've found an access to something inside of you, what does it sound like? Or what does it say? And that can be quite a fun exploration. It's led me to actually have a much better vocal technique. Not because I've had someone saying, oh, that sounds right or wrong, but actually just by being like, I made this sound because it felt good. And then I've made another sound that didn't feel so good. And then
less
exploring.
real?
Yeah, well, less real, or you start to feel like, oh, this sound doesn't feel present.
Okay.
It's a presence thing. And you can feel your presence inside. It's like a power inside of your body, which when you're having a really great like gig or something like that, and you're high and you're like flowing and you're not thinking, and it just feels like everything's flowing. I mean, a lot of people seek that in their own practices, the flow, this idea of flow.
Have you read that book?
It's by like that philosopher.
I can't remember his surname. Yeah. And I keep meaning to read it, but then I look at it, I'm like, that's a lot of pages for a flow.
Yeah. I think I basically understand what flow is.
The essence of flow.
The essence of flow. I mean, because we've all kind of know when we've experienced it, and then we're just trying to find it again.
A lot of people are chasing that.
Yeah.
I think that kind of almost like transcending the ordinary. That's, you know, there's another book called The Art of Losing Control. Jules something or other.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't think of the name off
Yeah.
my head. But he's a bit of a philosopher.
Yeah.
As well, and it's all about different ways that people lose control.
Right.
And 5 rhythms is one.
Everyone's always mentioning 5 rhythms.
Yeah, I've not been.
Me
I
neither.
keep meaning to go, but I'm also sort of terrified. Will I be the awkward one?
No, not at all. Okay, I've never been to a 5 rhythms, but I know that would not be the case.
So yeah, it's just one of those things I keep hearing about. But yeah, so I think he explored 5 rhythms, and then obviously drugs and like evangelical Christianity.
Yeah,
and
there
like
are
cults and things like that.
these things that kind of access the spiritual in us. And I'm not a religious person, and I don't necessarily find like religion through my singing, but I find connection with other people.
Yes.
And that for me is the big thing. A big part of like the workshops that I lead is that it's something you do with other people, and that I find is really important, because the voice is a tool that we use to communicate. So the reasons why we make sound itself is because we have to express our need for food or for sleep or for sex or for help or something like that. So something so primal is that when you do explore voice through moving your body and just letting stuff happen, and then suddenly you make eye contact with someone, and then you make sounds that you didn't expect, and that's like, whoa, it's a bit scary, but also at the same time, you finish the workshop and you're like, I know you so well now, and I might not know anything about you, but because we've made sound and we've moved together, there's a sense of that energy between us that is super powerful, and it's something I'm like seeking to try and facilitate better than I do, because that is super important. It's like a connection that we lack so often in normal life, and to achieve it through voice is so special.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, a lot of people do it through choir.
That's true.
And choir can be quite a transformative thing.
I think anything involving harmony is quite powerful. And I know that one of your exercises that you did was an aspect of that. So you'd kind of lay hands on people and then sort of sync, and there'd be a bit of dissonance as well sometimes, but then that had its own interest to it. Yeah,
there's a thing I feel like is interesting to most people. They don't realize that their bodies are resonant.
Yeah.
They think of, oh, my voice goes out there.
Yeah.
And actually your voice is like generated and amplified and created inside of your body. So I always like...
And you can move the resonance.
Yeah. I mean,
I wasn't even aware really that you could do that to the degree. Again, at the workshop we did some work on the mat, and then we sort of were doing like an ooh sound, and then we moved it back, to a different part of our heads. And I was not really aware that I could do that.
Yeah.
So it seemed disrelated, or maybe not completely disrelated, but I obviously understood the concept of like a vowel that sits further back and one that sits further forward, like a brighter vowel.
Yeah.
I was aware of that, and it, you know, that was something tangible, but this was something altogether different. The fact that you could actually move where it's resonating in your skull.
Yeah.
and the location of it was really quite amazing.
Yeah. And like I just am so obsessed by learning about the body. And then how it relates to singing, because I feel like in a lot of my vocal explorations people talk about technique like that, like a forward vowel or like twang or these things, and it's like, well, what does that actually mean? I mean, you can tell me exactly where to put my tongue and those kind of things, but I need to have an embodied experience or an embodied knowledge of it, which is based on this like idea of well, I think I understand the meaning of the word interoception.
Okay.
Which means that you have a feeling for what's going on inside of your body.
Yes.
So normally we're aware of what's going on outside, but we also have the sense to know what's inside.
Okay.
And so it's like by opening up your awareness, I can feel vibrations in the back of my head. I can feel them in my nasal tissue, or I can feel them in my throat. I can feel them in my chest. I can feel them in my back. Over time, it opens up even an awareness of like. I feel now the difference between like my feet being connected to the earth versus not. And in my research, I've been finding like why, for instance, when we exhale, does it just feel like there's a contraction in the front of your body? And I always felt like that. I was doing it in my workshops where if you're lying on the floor, you exhale, there's like a slight rock of the pelvis. And that helps to engage muscles in the perineum and around here. But I was like, I don't really know if that's actually based in science.
Okay.
And then I learned recently about this idea about the sphincters.
Okay.
Sphincters being like your eyes, your nose, other sphincters. Your vocal cords are like a sphincter. You've got sphincters in your stomachs. And so there's all these muscles that are closing. And when you are exhaling, there's actually a synchronicity between all of these sphincters throughout your body. They're also gently closing. And when they open,
interesting.
So when you open up, that's an inhale, and when you close, there is actually all of these things going on inside your body.
And can there be a disconnect or imbalance between them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like learning about the connection between the like vocal diaphragm, the diaphragm, and then the pelvic diaphragm. You realize if you don't have access to the pelvic diaphragm, there's going to be a weakness in the voice. So it's like, so you can train it, but you can also find it in like moments of primal sound, which is why I like using the movement and the play is a way of accessing this. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm doing it without having to be told, now contract your perineum.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know how to do that. If you don't have that interoception ability already, you can't just be like, sure. You know?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of us are locked out of that kind of, that kinesthetic, being aware of how things feel in our body, things like chronic pain, again, tension, working in an environment where emotions need to be suppressed, and it could be, that could take place in the voice. Sometimes I coach people that they come from corporate backgrounds, and they come in and they're very stiff and very, like, their body language is stiff, their voice feels stiff, and it's all because, our voices are so expressive. They, can betray emotion, and even taking a sigh, taking the breath we need to take. Yeah. It's kind of not really accepted in kind of certain work environments.
Yeah, and then you get into habits. I mean, the reasons why we hold tensions is because it's a habit that's built in to protect us from something, right? So, I mean, I work on this a lot myself because I know that I have certain tensions from doing Alexander technique and Feldenkrais. Yeah. It's opened my mind so much. I'm like, I'm doing these things which I just have to constantly check in. I had one teacher who said that our default is for our body to protect ourselves. So our default is to close. And
same with the voice, right?
Right. The default is to like contract or collapse. And it takes a lot of like courage and attention and focus and commitment to practice opening. And that's not only opening in like, your deep breaths, which are just good for your nervous system. It's not opening like up here so you don't have tension here, but it's also like opening to people, and it's opening to like the truth that you see around you. And a lot of us suppress our pain, and we suppress our feelings, and we suppress like, because we have to get through life.
Absolutely.
Which kind of sucks.
Do you think that's why a lot of people are drawn to improvisation? I say drawn to it, but also maybe terrified of it too.
You mean themselves doing it?
Yeah, because I know that there's meant to be a lot of benefits with improv, and it's something I'd like to explore. It also terrifies me. The idea that I might just go blank and not have, you know, a kind of a thought that I can work with.
Yeah. I love improv because it's taught me that you're never blank.
Okay. You might just think you are.
You might have a moment of like terror, but if you can breathe, then you'll find something interesting. I had an amazing improv dance teacher who I just loved it, because he would have us like stand up in front of everyone, and it's absolutely terrifying, but then you might notice that you're doing something because you're nervous, and then you're like, oh. And then this becomes something to explore and to play, and this is the themes coming back.
I love it.
But there's always something. And the thing about improv is there's no right way to do it, because you're not going to a score. I mean, maybe if you're trying to fit into a particular improv genre, like if I'm going to do a jazz improv with this lick, you know, you could possibly get it wrong. But the kind of improv that I really enjoy is where it's a blank canvas, and whatever sound comes out is what's coming up.
Okay.
But I mean, it's really hard to get to a place where that judging mind is like more interested in what's happening rather than judging what's happening.
Okay, yeah, that curious openness.
It's about being really curious. But I think, again, that's why it's helpful to do with other people who are just as curious as you, rather than like jumping straight into trying to, I don't know. It's a process. It's a process of learning to be open with it. And I mean, I've been going through that process myself with taking up my physical improv and voice improv into a public world. It's felt very vulnerable because it's really weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. People
I love how weird it is. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing.
I mean, it's I kind of have to learn to trust myself while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely confronting to people. Like my mother doesn't quite understand what I do. She's often like, when are you going to sing some real music?
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I do love real music, but this is a really great practice to learn to be creative and okay with who you are in that moment, and to find the voice that maybe you sound like an alien. But that's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's often people who reject it is because they're uncomfortable with uncertainty or the unknown of not knowing where something is going, or of the weirdness bringing up something in themselves.
Yeah.
So often when I'm doing these things, I remind myself, like, if someone in the audience doesn't like it, that's okay, they can leave.
Yeah.
But also they might feel uncomfortable in a way that brings up something interesting for them.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, when you're doing a performance, you don't want to be so much in your own world that you're not connecting to people.
It's that delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to be kind of, that's the zone really, isn't it? Kind of being able to observe and react in an authentic way, as in things can land on you, they land, you respond, and to be in tune with the room, but then not completely
out of yourself.
Yes.
And not watching yourself necessarily from a, oh, what am I doing kind of point of view. And it does get more interesting, because I'm trying to now learn how to compose with these approaches. So rather than like sitting down and writing a score of music for my singers, it's being like, okay, I want to create a situation where your creativity and your voice of the moment will arise, but in such a way that it creates something that's bigger than just all of us individually.
Okay.
That's something about, it's really related to my interest in this kind of thinking about ecosystems, and about we as individuals actually are so much more powerful when we operate from a place of truth, but then in respect and in working with other people. So it's basically an anti-hierarchical point of view,
Okay.
where it's not like, oh, someone out there is going to tell me what to do, which is very like in terms of music, it's a very Western classical music sort of form, which
Sure.
you have a composer who knows what's supposed to be. And I think in this modern day and age, we need to explore a different model
Absolutely.
where it's about a collaborative process in the moment. So I'm exploring like rules and systems that guide our primal sound.
Okay, so they guide, but they don't kind of impose
Yeah,
order.
exactly.
And how
Guide
do
or
you
shape or...
How do you build on that in terms of if you're wanting to compose? I'm guessing when you say compose, is there a longevity to it in the sense that something that's improvised in this kind of open way is kind of kept and like what's the word, preserved?
Yeah.
Preserved?
I mean, that's the constant challenge, and it's something that I've maintained in the workshops that I run, because I could just make them into group voice lessons.
Okay.
But I feel like the movement from, feeling yourself, connecting to that next person, and then creating something together is the super important stages. It's like 1, 2, 3, and for me the 3 is also important, where we're making something together.
Okay.
Because it's that mini act of like creativity in the rehearsal room, which I hope that we can take out into the world in a much healthier way than the world currently operates, which is based off of fear and like hierarchy.
Cool.
But yeah, so in working with my group, that ensemble, it's a long process of trying to like train essentially to have a deep connection to ourselves, but also being open to each other, and also holding some guidelines or rules. For instance, it might be the beginning of the score, we're starting this corner and eventually we all end up over here. I mean, that's a really simple thing, which you can still be moving through and exploring and sounding, but also follow the rule.
Sure.
And it tends to be that by having a rule or a framework, actually it lets you have a bit more freedom. Maybe it's because of this thing. It's like, if I could do anything in the world, what do I do?
Absolutely. Too many choices.
Exactly.
And it gets a bit overwhelming.
It really does. And then there's a thing in improv where people often like change too often.
Okay.
It's like, oh, I need to keep being interesting, and I'll do this now, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do something else, and then it just becomes like a wash of, as a performer and as an audience member, it's just like, it's too
Also,
much.
how do you know what's interesting? Sometimes we think we know what's interesting. And I recently heard a storyteller talking about how sometimes the detail that we might not think to include is actually where the gold really is.
Yeah, I definitely. And I've been approaching that in the solo stuff I've been developing by being okay with just like starting with something really simple and just like unfolding it like a little onion.
Yes.
And so instead of moving to the tomato and then, the aubergine or whatever, but really sticking with an onion. And I think it's a style of music that is maybe like kind of minimalist, almost drone based or something like that. But it kind of, for me, it takes commitment to like stick with it and be like, okay, I'm just going to explore this texture and see where it goes. I'm doing this because it actually does feel like a wave of life force or something like that. So instead of being like, and now I have to do a big run, being like, I will stick with this and explore this one little thing.
Sure.
And it yields, I don't know, I'm still learning if it calls up some truth or if it just remains an interesting vocal exploration. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
And do you have a way to record these things? Do you feel like it's something that you can build on? Because you mentioned compositions. Are there times that you're like, that is just pure gold, I want to keep that, and then build on that? And is it always organically just carry on growing, or do you record performances? I'm just interested about how it... Because I guess there's that thing of you want it to grow organically, and by its very essence, it needs to do that. You don't want to stifle it. But then obviously you probably want to kind of keep records of what you're doing. And
yeah. I mean, what we've kind of developed are instructional scores.
Okay.
So we can do the same score, but of course it would come out completely differently each time.
Yeah.
But it would have the same sort of quality. And I think that's helpful because I have done a lot of improv, which is less shaped, and I tend to has a similar like energy vibe.
Okay.
And so having a score can help you access different sides or different aspects of the work that you wouldn't necessarily get if you just started blank canvas on a stage. So I mean that is the exploration that I'm doing with this group, that it's really hard because I don't know anyone else who's kind of doing that with movement and voice, because when you bring in movement, you bring in theater.
Yes.
When you bring in movement, you bring in dance. When you bring in voice, you've got sound as well as text, as well as music, as well as singing. And so it's such a really rich soup that at times it's a bit overwhelming to be like, it can be everything.
And do you have to just kind of keep yourself focused on one thing?
What I'm learning over the course of the last 2 years is to try and focus down and to be disciplined about it. So it's a weird, it's like a paradox. On the one hand, I'm seeking for freedom through the movement and freedom for the voice, and on the other hand, I'm trying to find it through a focus and a restriction in a way.
Yeah, maybe constriction. Constriction. I recently heard about the concept of using constriction in terms of like prioritizing things. So telling yourself, this is what I'm going to do on this day, and that's all I'm going to do. And if I'm not doing that, I'm just going to sit here and wait until I feel like doing it.
Oh god, that sounds so harsh.
I know. I mean, I haven't quite tried it out. I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay. Let me know if you're like productivity is off the wall.
But it is one of those things, isn't it, where you kind of, if you're a curious person and you're interested in the world,
easily distracted.
Exact shiny objects. So it is kind of keeping your curiosity there, but then channeling it. And I guess the patience of kind of knowing, well, I can explore that in future. And I'm going to go down this and I'm going to see this through. And maybe that's it. You mentioned the grain of an idea and sticking with it and seeing it through to fruition, rather than kind of being like, right, I'm going to dump that now. I'm going to drop that and like go over here. Which is kind of tempting to do, I imagine. Yeah,
and I think that's normally what we do in our day. We were just talking about like how we have too much information flowing through our brains all the time. And it's actually really hard to focus. And it's work. You have to make an effort to be like, no, just yes to this thing right here in front of me. Definitely, especially when other people are involved as well. You want to give them your full attention and and it's something in my workshops that I'm working on as well, because I get very excited and I love moving and singing, so I just get every one of us has an internal tempo. Mine will start really fast. And because I've done some of the things, well, most of the things I'm leading, I've done them before and I love them, and I'm like, okay, we've done that, next one. So for me, I'm like, okay, my practice is actually to slow down and give people time to absorb these concepts, because for a lot of people it's really new, and it takes time to get to know yourself, and it takes time to actually let people rest. Absolutely, not overload them with and I think you can, as a music educator, get really excited about imparting everything and being like, there's so much to teach, and I feel that sometimes, and then you just met with the stare of like, okay, you're like, sorry, just forget the last 3 things. Let's just focus on the first one we did. Let's just go back to that. Exactly. And how do you know then when someone is ready, or the group, I guess you have to read the room, is ready to kind of go on to the next phase? Is it just a feeling that you get, or? In terms of workshop leading, it's definitely, I have to be super in the room. Super sensitive to the vibes that people are giving off, and so often that means if I was excited about teaching 4 things, I might just have to get to 3. Or I might throw them all out and be like, okay, we're going in this direction. It's quite fun sometimes when that happens though, and then when you actually do kind of, you hit the right vein and you're in the right area and it just works. And then you get so stuck in. But it's always a shame if that happens at the end of a session. And then you have to go. And you're like, no, I have to carry that next week. But I think it's exactly the same for when you're doing improvisation. I mean, it is improvisation. And we need improvisation in all aspects of our life. But in terms of a musical improvisation as well, sometimes it doesn't work so well if you have too much of a mindset about what you're going to do already. I was recently doing an improv collaboration where a choreographer was like, okay, Kate, you have to do something for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. And I was so focused on getting that right that it was actually helpful, because I was just like, blah, 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 for a minute, because I couldn't plan anything. I couldn't prepare it. I was just like, start, go. And I got 30 seconds. I have to make something.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's actually really helpful. I think in so much of like the creative process, sometimes we get too precious.
Yes.
And
Perfectionism.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. And like going back over it and editing is wonderful, but there's something really special about that moment of creation.
Yeah, and I guess following it through, because you
Yeah.
can start the editing process too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into problems, because then how do you unpick that and remove that kind of left brain once it's involved?
Yeah, but it's why I don't actually do that much composition by myself. I don't, like, I do play instruments, I do write songs, but so often I just kind of get like, I just need more people. I need other people in the room.
Okay.
And that's why I love the improv practice, because I can make so much music and such a variety of music so quickly without thinking about it. That it's like, once you start doing that, it's really hard to go back to being like, you know? It just feels so different too in the body.
And does it feel more freeing because it's not all about, I guess when you're working with other people, it stops being about you.
Yeah.
And that can be quite freeing to like then.
Which is why I love doing music.
Yeah, you escape the ego a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
Because it's not all on you. And then if you have respect for the people that you're working with.
And you trust their input.
Yeah. Then you have more respect for the work often, and you doubt the work less because you have faith in the people around you as well.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it's reciprocated and it's,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
I mean, of course, working with other people is always has challenges.
Of course.
But it can be so rewarding. If you approach it with like a sense of, I'm going to learn from this.
Yeah.
Or I can't hold on to too much. Like, I want to offer this. But to offer something, it means you have to let it go.
Yeah.
And let it be what it is, and someone else will add on to it, and then it's something so different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy that process. Yeah.
That's great. And what drew you to improv originally? So did you, while you were at college, did you go to a class? Was it something you tried very early on, or did you come to it later?
I guess when I was in college, I took this class with my voice teacher, Jane McMahon, and we did music from all sorts of different genres, and we did have a class on like jazz, and I just remember a lot of people feeling very hesitant to go away from the written like melody.
Yeah.
And so I never really had a problem with playing around what was like the normal, because I think it's coming from singing harmony growing up, like you hear other things, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But then I never actually did much improv singing. I did improv theater since I was like 13.
Okay.
So I was always comfortable with improvising with acting. I only started taking it into my singing when I got when I started doing a lot of professional singing. And I was just gigging a lot and didn't necessarily know my music as well as I should have. I was also emceeing, working with a burlesque troupe and making my own cabarets, and just in a setting where I felt very free to mess up if I needed to. If I forgot my words,
That's great.
So I started doing that a lot more, literally in gigs, because I just didn't practice enough.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and it was all okay. And so, I don't know. I started getting into it because of how I started to perform my own music, which was I started making my own cabarets, and for that I would take like what was written music and then kind of mess around with it and play with it and like rewrite certain parts, and it gave me a real sense of like comfort on stage. I think when you feel comfortable with improvising on stage, it just like lets you settle into what it means to be a performer on stage, because you can't be worried about what the audience thinks of you, because they're actually there to support you.
Yes, that's true.
And it's almost like those moments of like when you make a joke and they love it, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I just used a really funny word that a weird esoteric vocabulary, and people thought it was funny. Okay, that's fine. Let's go with it. You know? So it was through that practice that then when I moved to London, I really started doing the experimental stuff. Just because I got so much into exploring movement and yoga and singing. And then I was like, oh my god, I'm going to do all these weird noises now.
Awesome. So the singing came first. I apologise. Sorry. Shall I move him into the living room?
That's fine.
Okay. We have a cat with us
Yay.
to join in.
Hello, Ellen.
So singing came first,
Mm-hmm.
and then the movement, and then improvisation.
The movement and the improvisation kind of came around the same time.
Okay.
And it was funny. It kind of started because I was at Guildhall doing my master's, and I changed programs, and I moved out of the opera program and classical singing into a practice-led one, which is more about learning what motivates you as an artist, and about discovering how you collaborate and what interests you, essentially. And I was like, well, I'm really interested in vocal technique. I'm really interested in my movement practice, which is yoga at this time. And I had to stop taking lessons with my teacher because they didn't include them in my master's.
Oh, was Janice as well? Did you work?
She
with
studied
Janice?
with Janice, and I studied with Mary.
Okay, because you mentioned primal voice,
Yes,
which
is something that comes from Janice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea of splat and accent method and all these things, really useful. So I started to like really explore them, but in my own way on the mat, literally.
Okay.
And because I didn't have a teacher, it was just what I did. And I have a voice journal where I note down what I've noticed, what I've learned, or like what was difficult. And I record myself, and sometimes I'll listen back. So I very much started my own singing teaching myself.
Great.
And that has been really important because I realized, okay, actually learning to sing is about taking control of your own process. You can't rely on your teacher always to be there.
No.
It's not like the olden days where you only studied with your teacher in the room like 2 hours every day.
And it was that old kind of master-student relationship where it was kind of, this is how you should sound for this role, and my ears and my opinion is the right one.
Yeah.
It's much more about collaboration, isn't it, these days as well?
Yeah, and collaboration, like as a teacher, you're trying to help your student learn about their instrument rather than saying you should play your instrument this way. And I only really managed to find that by kind of going off the grid.
Okay.
And now I try to help my students do that as well.
Absolutely.
Where I'm like, I found these techniques which help me learn more about myself.
Yeah.
Why don't you try them? I'll tell you what I hear.
Yeah.
I want to know what you feel. And how do those two match? Do it differently now. How do those two match? So it's, for me, it's very much based off of like physical feeling. And it came from that like unfortunate thing, but it was also really lucky that I didn't have a teacher for a while.
Okay.
And that means I feel really confident that the things I've learned are actually quite grounded.
Absolutely. And maybe kind of they've had time to sink in.
Yeah. I think time is always important.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just need your brain to let everything soak in, and it makes sense when you've had a little bit of a break actually from too much information. And
yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest things I learned from many different people was to be gentle to myself. And like, if I'm feeling tired from practicing, I'm probably not doing something right, so I should probably stop and rest. And so like, if I'm only going to sing like 40 minutes a day, but it's in 4 sections of 10 minutes, that's fine.
Yeah. That's still a lot more than most people.
Well, it's so interesting. Like, I used to do really intense like warm-ups and then get really tired and like not have the space to sing, and I was like, something's weird here. So I had to go back to the drawing board and be like, what am I doing in my warm-ups? And actually, so I had to like break it down. I don't even use scales now when I'm doing my warm-up. I just do some physical things, and I focus on just relaxing my muscles essentially. And then like after a couple of minutes, I feel like the blood is rushing, I feel excited, music starts coming to me, I start improvising, and then I'm like, oh, my voice is warmed up.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you do any sirens or
lots and lots and lots of
I love sirens too.
Lots of sirens, but like sirens about, for me it's mostly about connecting to the breath and feeling like a centered, low center of gravity. And also connecting with my back.
Yeah.
and connecting with the resonant spaces. So yeah, the sirens like everything. You just need sirens.
Sirens are brilliant. They're just brilliant.
Different sorts of sirens, but yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned kind of going back to the drawing board and going, right, what do I need? And what maybe isn't working for me? And was there anything in particular that kind of hit you? You're thinking, that's not working for me?
Yeah, it's because going back to this conversation earlier about the producer mind and being a striver and kind of, what's it called, a high achiever?
Yes.
Always going.
Yeah.
I found that in my own technique, I had a somewhat higher larynx than I needed for classical singing.
Okay.
And also some levels of constriction and tongue root tension and things like that.
It's so common, isn't it?
And it's just because you kind of think of it directionally. Like in our life, we always face forward. Our computer's in front of us. We walk down the street that way. We so rarely forget about the spaces behind us.
Absolutely.
And we forget about our energy goes back as well. And also we forget about being connected to the floor. We forget about our skeletal system and how it's actually taking care of us. And we think we have to hold ourselves up. So I would have like back pain from holding myself up too much. I have shoulder pain from holding myself up too much. I have constriction from like pressing to get my sound out because I had a really powerful sound, a big voice when it gets to like high classical stuff.
Okay.
But also it wasn't. There was a sense of tension there.
There was an edge to it.
There's an edge. Yeah.
I've been there too, and I think sometimes you can really hear people's hang-ups, people's attitude to life in their voice.
Yeah.
And the people that try and the people that push. And you always know in the studio a thinker, someone that thinks too much. I always notice them and I'm like, I know, I'm one of those
I
as
relate
well.
to that.
And then the people that try really hard, and you just know because they push everything, they throw everything into it, and you can often hear that. And I feel like a lot of learning to sing is actually unlearning.
Exactly.
A lot of things.
It's learning to let go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's muscles that you need to engage, but there's so many that you don't need to.
Oh yes.
And even still, like the other day I was doing practice, like something sounds, or it feels a little bit too ringy in my head right now.
Okay.
And I realized that like just this one little muscle was going, just a little bit too much. But it's because I've developed enough of a sense that I can like capture that quickly in myself.
Yeah, that's
I was
brilliant.
like, okay, I need to relax this. So I just go and meditate for 5 minutes.
I love that.
Stand back up, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to let that happen.
Okay, singing goals. I want to work to that. To be really in tune like that. And, yeah.
I mean, there's still so many things that don't quite work. But it's always like a practice. Because some days that just doesn't happen to me, and I'm like, oh, it's so easy today. Whatever. And it's probably because I was having a good day. I was making some fun noises, whatever. And there, and other days, it's a bit stressful and my energy's up here and not down here. So it's like you think something's wrong with you, and actually it's just you need to let there be space.
Yeah.
So I think
something's wrong. Maybe it's instead of thinking something's wrong with you, just accepting the idea you don't actually maybe need to be fixed, and you can just go with what's there already.
Yeah, that's also. I mean, like being okay with where you are is so important and so hard. My first year at Guildhall was tough because I was changing a lot of things. I was moving from being like a country folk singer who sang with microphones a lot to this weird conservatory culture where I was finally being taught like really good vocal techniques. And there was a lot of change, and like your muscles don't change overnight.
No, of course.
And a lot of it was about learning to relax, and you also don't relax overnight.
No, you don't. Did you ever have any trips to see Ed Blake and have one of those?
Oh my god, I would love to.
Voice massages.
I'm actually like would love to do that because I do grind my teeth at night.
Okay.
And I know that that's probably doing something to my singing voice. And I would love to just
creating tension. I think so many of us have tongue root tension or jaw tension. But yeah, you might kind of want to do it just to see.
Just want to try it. No, the thing is what I'm doing right now is I'm just going around and studying and meeting everyone I can.
Yes.
Because I'm really there's so much knowledge out there, and I just think going to only one teacher or only one system, for me, it's not enough. I would not be where I was if I didn't explore yoga and mindfulness and brought that into my practice. If I'd only, studied one technique, I wouldn't have discovered how helpful these other things are. So yeah, learning the technique and then learning to live it and then studying with all these different people. Like you just have to, again, play and explore.
Absolutely. And I guess it's kind of being comfortable as well with doing your own path, treading your own path.
Yeah.
And not
Also
feeling like but a lot of people are scared to. Or a lot of people feel more comfortable belonging in a gang, and that can be even a vocal technique. It could be, it could be various different gangs, aren't there?
Yeah.
And so it's quite, I feel like it's quite liberating as well to do your own thing and explore different areas and follow your interests as well, like you said, without getting distracted.
Easier said than done.
Oh yeah, it's a tall order. I just listed off a big long list there.
Do this, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah, and have fun.
And also don't do too much.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it's had a really important impact on like who I am as a person now though, because I do feel like I've learned to, like, my motto now is less is more.
Yes. Creating some space, I think. But I've always felt in your workshops that there is space. There's a nice feeling of space.
Yeah, I don't want to tell people the right thing to feel or the right thing to sound.
Yeah.
Because everyone is so different. And no, I do catch myself as a teacher sometimes being like, I ask a student a question and I expect them to say one thing and they say something different and I'm like, oops, that's not what I was going for, but I just have to let it be.
Yeah, okay.
If that's really what they're feeling right now, that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe their perception will change over time.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just because their bodies are like that. I don't know.
Sure. Well, everyone is sort of different, aren't they?
So different.
There's a Feldenkrais teacher, Robert, is it Sassouma?
Oh yeah, I've seen some stuff about him.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because I don't know if you listened to, there was a podcast that he was on, the Naked Vocalist podcast.
Oh, I haven't listened to his yet.
It's really good, but he's talking about how his larynx is actually different.
Yeah.
So he has kind of like an abnormality, I guess. And by rights, he should have ruined his voice by what he was doing with what he had.
Right.
But because he kind of went with what felt right to him,
right,
and found his own path around it, rather than just going, no, it needs to sound like this and I need to do it like this. He kind of trusted his own sensations and feelings, and with his anatomy that was kind of structurally different, he made it work.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting.
But I think all of us are structurally unique, right?
Absolutely.
So I learned so much though from my students as well.
You do, don't you?
I'm like, how did they make that sound?
Yeah.
Oh, I will try this myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which is so exciting because you never know everything.
Do you, when you're improvising and you're making lots of different sounds, are you, do you kind of conceptualize the sound? Is there a split second before when you're like, you know what sound you're going to make? Or is it surprising even as you're making the sound?
It's definitely a mix of both.
Okay.
But I start from a place of trying to be surprised.
Okay.
And that goes back to the same thing of like, you're standing in front of an audience, you have no idea what you're going to do, and you just find something to be interested in.
Yeah.
So, so sometimes I'll just be interested in the sound that's happening and I'll explore it. Sometimes because I have got that composer's mind going in the back of my head, I'll be like, oh, now I'm going to try something that is a bit more like scaled based or something like that. And, you are aware of that. And then I'll be like, no, I'm stuck with this scale, so now I want to get out of it.
Yeah.
How do I break this? I'm always interested in breaking things.
Yes.
As you build stuff up, then I'm always like, tear it down.
Do you think you need to know the rules to break the rules, or do you think you can just break them freely without knowing them?
Oh, that's a good point. Sometimes you have to know that you're in a rule to break it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be like aware that, I'm just doing a riff that I've done before or that I've heard. And
some people might not even know it because you might not have any formal music tuition.
Yeah.
But then certain scales like the pentatonic scale.
You get stuck on the pentatonic scale or something, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't know why you know it. So, when I was coming up with vocal melodies, often I'd kind of do like arpeggios or something like
I
that.
wonder why.
And I didn't know why or what they were called. And then my bandmate would go, oh, see, I know why your vocal melodies are good, or you're doing this, and I wouldn't even be aware of what I was doing.
Yeah.
But just because you don't have the words for it doesn't mean you're not doing. Yeah.
I mean, so much of it, like so much of the sounds I make, I don't have words. I mean, you don't need words for that.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
you're still encoded by your culture and the scales that are in the songs that you're listening to.
Yeah. That's something I struggle with, and actually I've been working a lot with like semitones as a way to get out of my typical improv brain.
Okay, like looking at Eastern music, or just non-Western, or just exploring?
Just like, so often in Western music we use steps.
Yeah.
And so I've been like, okay, I'm not going to explore improvising on with like music that would fit on a keyboard.
Okay.
I'm going to sing the stuff that's in between.
Okay, sure.
Or I'm going to do a color or a texture.
Sure.
Rather than thinking about it as a note. Or maybe it's like you draw on something from theater where it's like, I'm going to do this as a character rather than, you know, so it helps you break away from thinking about music as, you know, written or like having, I don't know, sometimes if you imagine, some people think of like high notes are up here and low notes are down here, and like I'm stepping up and stepping down, and
that never helped me.
No, I think it's actually really unhelpful.
Yeah.
To the ways we visualize things. So for me, it's like, can I flip my visualization? Can I be in a different space? And that is really fun when I get into a creative place where I'm not necessarily thinking about what this is in terms of a scale, but I'm thinking more about like an image or like just a quality or something that, again, that interests me. But you can get stuck, and when that happens, sometimes I think it's better just to stop.
Absolutely, and come back to it with a refreshed mind.
Yeah, and like silence in improv, and like stopping or letting someone else come is also just a generous thing to do for yourself and for others. It's a good practice.
Yeah,
so you should do it.
I like it. Awesome.
I think we're good.
Yeah, how was that?
Brilliant. I loved
Sorry
it.
about the cat and the dishwasher. I was like,
was the dishwasher going? Oh!
I was like, just ignore it. Just ignore it. I'm sorry about that.
I heard a beep, but I thought it was like a truck outside.
Oh yeah, good. I'm glad. We'll just blame it on the truck. No, I'm pretty sure it's a dishwasher going, I'm done now. Hi. I should have shut the doors, but...
No, it was fun. It was great. Everybody loves the cats. Everybody loves animals in videos, man.
And
I love
the
them.
improv nature of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
The cat went with it, and we went with the cat.
The cat was a great addition. The cat's going to be like the most famous thing.
I love it. Amazing.
No, it was so interesting.
Yeah.
It was.
Good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you're an interesting lady.
No, you're an interesting lady.
You are, both of you. So it was just fantastic.
It's always lovely to have a conversation with Hannah.
Oh, you too. Yeah. I remember contacting Kate because I wanted to find out a bit more about her work, and then you were like, let's meet for coffee, and I was like, yeah, so much fun. And we talked for ages, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about like looking for other voice teachers who are not too narrow-minded, right?
Yeah.
I met this lovely woman at this workshop yesterday from Cambridge.
Great.
She teaches at Cambridge. She teaches college students singing.
Oh.
But she was at this workshop, and she was like, so lovely. We were talking about Feldenkrais, and I was like, oh, it's another person who's in the same boat.
I love it.
Interested in these other things.
I actually have a book about Feldenkrais just there that my student's mom has given me. She's written it.
She wrote it.
She wrote it.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's a Feldenkrais teacher then.
She is. I really like Feldenkrais.
It's another one of these things where I love studying it, and I'm like, would I want to become a teacher in it?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's other things out there too.
Yes.
Can't
but
choose.
You can just kind of do your own thing, can't you?
Yeah, I'm hoping.
And add strings to your bow and then do things in your own direction, because, like anything really can become narrow or
dogmatic or...
Yeah, and then, I'm sure you've seen some of the groups that I've seen online where people tear each other apart about vocal technique.
Yeah.
And it's unnecessary, but everyone wants to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely need to do something to counter that.
I think so. I think people are very scared of being wrong. And and we're kind of wanting to prove how they want to get their degree out on the table.
Yeah.
And their doctorate out on the table.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, obviously we need people that are really thorough in their research.
Yeah. And have really looked at stuff.
Yeah. But you also kind of need a kind of culture where it's not about shouting each other down.
Yeah, or having all the answers.
Yeah, because especially with some of this stuff when it is groundbreaking, and if you are working with something that is very holistic, like that, you know, not all of it is explained, and it becomes explained over time.
Yeah.
Now we understand about how tension travels, and then we get the explanation later.
Yeah.
But sometimes at the time, we just have to sort of kind of go on what we experience and what results we get.
Yeah. I mean, it's that balance of again, your embodied knowledge and then the intellectual knowledge.
Yeah.
And eventually the two will meet in certain places.
Yes.
And if they don't, then something's a little weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, maybe this is not actually... Flat tongues don't make for good resonance, you know?
Oh no, the flat tongues definitely don't.
We don't like flat tongues. I think we should do something about that. I mean, do you know other voice teachers who are kind of on the same page?
I have a friend who she is kind of both a voice teacher and a piano teacher. More of a piano teacher, I think. And she is on a similar page, I think.
Getting ideas now. Producer mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Producer mind coming on to like, we need to do a monthly meetup.
Sounds good.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Veronique is in my group that she also teaches. She's had horrible experiences with voice teacher at Guildhall 30 years ago. He forbid her from making any sound for like a year. Not even speaking.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's just abuse.
She says she learned stuff from him, and she does have this gorgeous voice, but she found her voice again through drawing, through breath, and like she would do...
He basically made someone a mute.
Yeah. It was horrible. But then she it's got Stockholm syndrome, where she also really respected him and loved him as a teacher.
I hate that. You know, did I tell you I'm writing a book?
Yes.
I'm writing a book and I actually talk about bad singing teacher Stockholm syndrome.
Fascinating.
And about how some people...
You should interview her.
Yeah, well, some people just kind of... It's like they don't really believe that you know what you're doing unless you're abusing them.
Yes.
And I refuse to abuse people.
Yeah.
So, it's just unnecessary and also a bit evil as well, that too.
Yeah. I can sympathize with it, but when I first came to London, I had a choice between two teachers. One of them was like, it's too much to do for you, I can't do it, and blah blah blah. And the other one was like really lovely and sweet, and I was kind of drawn to the one who was going to be hard on me. Because that's my personality. I want to like struggle. You
think, oh, they've got the answer, and it's like, no, a lot of them are just full of hot air and they promise the answer, but ultimately, you know, as you mentioned, that's something that you need to come to from your own exploration of your voice. It's a collaboration. And that's why it is good to seek out different teachers and different experts and kind of see where they're coming from and what resonates with you really deeply. But yeah, certainly abuse is not going to get you anywhere. I think there is that kind of... Have you seen Whiplash?
Everyone was talking about it last week, actually.
Yeah,
you have to suffer and like go through pain or it'll be great.
And he's like, he has a sadistic teacher in it. And it explores, and it's kind of open-ended in a way. It doesn't really tell you whether... I don't think it tries to tell you whether or not the teacher brought out the best in him, and I guess it probably lets you make that decision.
Yeah.
In my opinion, bad teachers don't get good results.
I don't think so. I mean, in anything, it's like, you can't train someone to do or an animal.
Yeah, you wouldn't abuse an animal.
No, positive reinforcement is always stronger.
Yeah,
it's always better.
Absolutely.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense for singing as well, is because like, if you're in a fight or flight response, you're just not going to get the voice out.
Of course you're not.
So it's going to be tension, it's going to be pushing, it's going to be, you're going to get nodes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're not breathing deeply if you're stressed. And if you're not breathing deeply, you're not releasing the diaphragm. So
absolutely.
It's all there. Like, you can't fight the biology.
Yeah.
No, we really should do like a practical, like, alternative singer, teaching singers meetup.
That'd be good. That'd be really good.
Like just skill sharing or like talking and seeing like, I think it goes like this, and someone else is like, I've experienced it differently.
Yeah. And I think it'd be good for our generation and like younger teachers as well coming up. And I think we're sort of like in a different era.
Well, I always, you see a lot of teachers out there who I wonder, oh, they're just teaching the same thing that their teacher taught them.
Probably.
And I think it's so important to know variety of approaches.
Yeah.
Because what your teacher taught you and that you learned from might not be right for your students either.
That's true.
Although I fully believe in mindfulness as a helpful aspect of teaching, so I will stand by that with all of my students.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I think that's what we're losing. Sometimes it's just so tempting to just look on your phone, even when you're walking down the street. Not advisable.
No, it's really bad for relationships as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a screensaver on my phone. Well, not a screensaver, but a background, and it has a collage of everyone I love. Well, not everyone I love, but several people that I love, including my cat.
Aww.
And it says, who do you want to pay attention to?
Oh, that's such a good
As
thing.
a nice little prompt that if I am, kind of checking emails or something, and I'm meant to be relaxing with my husband in the evening, I'm like, I can reply to these emails in the morning.
Oh, that's so good.
So it just kind of prompts me a little bit, actually I'm going to put this away.
I need to get that for me and my significant other.
Good.
Get rid of the video games.
Aww.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was
I'm glad
really
we finally got
fun.
to have this chat.
Yeah.
After that year of me not writing.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. I think sometimes timing happens. Things just happen at the right
They
time.
happen at the right
don't they?
time. That's another lesson.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I still would really like to write something, but I'm still figuring out what it is. It just feels really big.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah, of course.
So.
And it is, but I guess it's just like one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And this is helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I'm going to listen back and be like, why did I say these things? Or like, I could have said that better. But that's maybe helpful as well.
I think it can be helpful. I think sometimes speaking things out loud actually helps you kind of get a more concrete idea about how you feel about something.
Yeah.
Or maybe not concrete, maybe that sounds like...
Just even to know what you are thinking about something.
You say it out loud and you're like, oh yeah, that's actually how I think about that.
Yeah, or, oh, I said that and that's wrong. Take it back.
Cool.
Well, I wonder what we do with this.
I'll leave it up to you.
Are you recording on a card? Or
Yeah.
Maybe I can even copy it onto my computer.
You can take it out. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Are you going to do a little bit of improv?
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I totally forgot. Asked me to do an improv.
Is that okay?
Yeah, can I use your microphone for it?
Yeah, of course you can. We'll turn this on.
And can I use your loop?
Of course. I'll show you where it is.
Wow.
Yes, Rascal.
He's going to be the star, right?
Yeah, I know. Such a great improviser.
Oh, yeah, I think there is that kind of... Have you seen Whiplash?
Everyone was talking about it last week, actually.
Yeah,
You have to suffer and like go through pain and it'll be great.
And he has a sadistic teacher in it. And it explores, and it's kind of open-ended in a way. It doesn't really tell you whether... I don't think it tries to tell you whether or not the teacher brought out the best in him, and I guess it probably lets you make that decision.
Yeah.
In my opinion, bad teachers don't get good results.
I don't think so. I mean, in anything, it's like
No.
you can't train someone to do or an animal.
No. Yeah, you wouldn't abuse an animal.
No. Positive reinforcement is always stronger.
Yeah,
it's always better.
absolutely.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense for singing as well, is because like if you're in a fight or flight response, you're just not going to get the voice out.
Of course you're not.
So it's going to be tension. It's going to be pushing. It's going to be you're going to get nodes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're not breathing deeply, if you're stressed, and if you're not breathing deeply, you're not releasing the diaphragm. So
Absolutely.
it's all there. Like you can't fight the biology.
Yeah.
No, but we really should do like a practical, like alternative singer, teaching singers meetup.
That'd be good. That'd be really good.
Like just skill sharing or like talking and seeing like, I think it goes like this, and someone else is like, I've experienced it differently.
Yeah. And I think it'd be good for our generation and like younger teachers as well coming up. I think we're sort of like in a different era.
Well, I always, you see a lot of teachers out there who I wonder, they're just teaching the same thing that their teacher taught them.
Probably.
And I think it's so important to know variety of approaches.
Yeah.
Because what your teacher taught you and that you learned from might not be right for your students either.
That's true.
Although I fully believe in mindfulness as a helpful aspect of teaching, so I will stand by that with all of my students.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I think that's what we're losing. Sometimes it's just so tempting to just look on your phone, even when you're walking down the street. Not advisable.
No, it's really bad for relationships as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a screensaver on my phone. Well, not a screensaver, but a background, and it has a collage of everyone I love. Well, not everyone I love, but several people that I love, including my cat.
Aww.
And it says, who do you want to pay attention to?
Oh, that's such a good
As
thing.
a nice little prompt that if I am, kind of checking emails or something and I'm meant to be relaxing with my husband in the evening, I'm like, I can reply to these emails in the morning.
Oh, that's so good.
So it just kind of prompts me a little bit, actually I'm going to put this away.
I need to get that for me and my significant other.
Good.
Get rid of the video games.
Aww.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was
I'm glad
really
we finally got
fun.
to have this chat.
Yeah.
I thought there was a fish for a second.
Oh, the larynx.
The larynx.
Yeah.
Speaking of fish.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you give me a place?
A place. San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay. We'll do something with that.
Awesome.